Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening everybody. It's Monday night, so there's tonight's Chumash. Again, a reminder, this Wednesday night there's no class, but next Monday there will be a class. Okay, in this Parshat, Torah begins with the verse, Ki Teitzei le'milchama alevecha, okay, chapter 21, Pasuk 10. Okay, when you go out to war against your enemies, Un sanoi Hashem elokecha biyadecha, and Hashem will give him over in your hands. V'shavisa shivya, and you'll capture a captive. So we'll discuss that in a few minutes. But just this part of the pasuk is really a little complicated to understand, because when you go, first of all, Rashi says, what type of war are we talking about? There's two types of wars when the Jews went to battle. There was milchemes chova, an obligatory battle, like to conquer the 7 nations, to conquer Amalek. That wasn't optional. And then another type of battle is called milchemes reshus, optional. Like if the Jews wanted, David HaMelech, for instance, in his time he wanted to add more land to Eretz Yisrael, so he would go to war. But that wasn't a mandatory mitzvah war. That was an optional war. So Rashi says this war of this pasuk is speaking about optional war, because the Torah says you're going to capture a captive. Now, in the mandatory war of conquering Eretz Yisrael, the Torah says you can't let anybody stay alive. So it's impossible to capture anybody because you have to kill them all. Okay? So that's number one. We need to understand, again, everything we learn in Chumash has to be done in a spiritual, personal level. Okay? So what is this battle in our personal lives? Optional battle versus mandatory battle. That's number one. Another thing is, it's a funny expression when you go out to war. When you have a war, what do you mean you go out to? The Torah says, every word in Torah is exact. The Torah says, Ki Teitzei le'milchama. When you go out to fight a battle. The Torah says, when you have a battle. What do you mean you go out? Why does the Torah emphasize the concept of going out? Another problem with this pasuk is, literally, when you go to battle, you have battle with an enemy. Now, the word for with in Hebrew would be im, with an ayin. Ki Teitzei le'milchama im eivecha. When you go out to battle with your enemy. Al eivecha means on your enemy. So they're basically saying, grammatically, it says like this. When you go out to war on your enemy, it should be with your enemy. Why is it saying on your enemy? Another interesting thing is, al eivecha, in Hebrew, the word eivecha means your enemies, plural. Eivecha is plural. The next word, onesanoi, means Hashem will give him. Because it should have said onesanam, which is plural. If you're saying enemies, plural, then you can't say God will give him in your hands. Then God should have said, I will give them over in your hands. Okay? So this pasuk is very complicated. Just the expression of going out. Why does it say on your enemy? Then it says plural and singular. Okay? And then the Torah says you're going to see a captive, a beautiful woman, that we're going to discuss in a few minutes what that means. So the explanation of this is as follows. There's two, we mentioned before, there's two types of battles. There's an optional battle and a mandatory battle. The optional battle for a Jew in our personal lives is before the neshama comes into the body. Before the neshama comes into the body, it's sitting in Gan Eden, it's learning Torah, it's doing, the things it has to do. That is not a mitzvah war, because there's no evil that you have to fight. When the soul comes into the body, when the neshama comes into the guf, into the body, like it said, you live against your will, because the neshama doesn't want to come down into a body and have to fight constantly evil inclination and Yetzer Hara and the world. It doesn't want to come down. But the war in the body is actually a obligatory war. Hashem sends the neshama down against our will. Okay, it means it's an obligatory obligation. Hashem is sending us down to function. Optional is the way the neshama is Gan Eden. Whatever it does there is optional. Okay, that's number one.
guf is Israel.
The guf, well, over there it means when you're fighting in Israel. But again, what does it mean on a personal level? The Torah is speaking to me and you and to everybody else. The Torah is saying, when you go out to war against your enemy, okay, etc., etc., etc. So what does it mean in a spiritual sense? Okay. So it says like this. Ki Teitzei means when you will go out. What does it mean you will go out? The neshama in Gan Eden is basking in godliness. All of a sudden, the neshama is now coming into a corrupt world. That means it has to go out from its present status, out of its own comfort zone, so to speak, and now it has to do a battle with the body, with the evil inclination. Again, we're talking on a personal level. So the Torah says, Ki Teitzei laMilchama, when you go out to war, meaning it's not a comfort zone to conquer the world, to make the world a holy place. You're fighting the odds. You're fighting against evil forces. You're fighting our own internal Yetzer Hara and everything. So the Torah says it comes a time, Ki Teitzei, that you need to go out. You need to go out of your comfort zone. You know, so to speak, even at the present level. Leave the walls of the yeshiva, which is a comfort zone. You have no yoke of making a living. You have no worries. You have no headaches. Okay, even though they think they're really headaches, they have tests. They go crazy. If the kids, the teenagers today tell their parents, do you think you have a hard life? We have a hard life. We have to do midterms and finals. You know, they have a real hard life. But it's a joke. It's not the difficulty of life. Torah says, Ki Teitzei laMilchama, a Jew has to go out to fight. You can't stay in your comfort zone. There's evil out there in the world, you got to conquer it. There's evil within us, our animal soul, the Yetzer Hara, all that, we need to conquer it. But the Torah says a very interesting thing. When you go out, the attitude of a Jew in battle, or any soldier in battle, they go to battle with a victory march. They go to battle, even lahavdil, in sports, right? Before they start the game, the cheerleaders are already screaming, we won, we won. They didn't even start playing yet. But they need to have an attitude that I'm not going to fight with my enemies. I'm going to conquer them. Ki Teitzei. When you go out to war, the Torah says, in life, we're not talking about in battle, that's also true, but we're talking personally now. The Torah says, when you go out to fight your evil forces within us, your attitude has to be, Al Ivecha, I'm going to conquer them. They will not conquer me. Because it's interesting, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, you can have two people fighting. One might be stronger than the next. But if the weaker one has more spirit, more enthusiasm, he will win even though the other guy's stronger. Because spirit in games, which is also a battle of two teams, whatever it is, the attitude in life has to be an attitude we will overcome. Because we can overcome, because we have a neshama which is a part of Hashem. And if we have a neshama which is a part of Hashem, just like for Hashem there's nothing too complicated, for us there's also nothing too complicated. Okay, and there isn't anything that we can do. And therefore we can fight the battles and win the battles. So the Torah says like this. Why Ki Teitzei, in life, you cannot be status quo. You have to go out. A proper businessman doesn't wait for people to come to him to do business. You go out, you hustle to find new customers, new whatever it is. So the Torah is teaching us in life. Ki Teitzei, you have to go out. And it's a battle. It's you leaving your comfort zone. But your attitude has to be, Al Ivecha, you're going to conquer your enemies, which are plural. And the Rebbe explained what are the two enemies. There's the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, which is the enemy of the body. He wants to kill us. And the Satan, which is the enemy of the soul. The Gemara says, Hu ha-Yetzer Hara, Hu ha-Satan, Hu ha-Malach HaMavis. It's one angel with three different names. Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. Satan, and the angel of death. And the Gemara explains. First, the Yetzer Hara convinces you to sin. Then the Satan, the same God, by the way, comes and prosecutes you to God. And then he comes and kills you. It's the same guy, the Gemara says. So your attitude has to be, there's two enemies. There's your bodily enemies and your soul enemies. The Satan is against the soul. The angel of death wants to kill us, to kill the body. In the spiritual sense we're talking. So the Torah says, when you go out, you need to have the attitude, we're going to be on top of the enemies. And you should know that it's plural enemies. But then the Rebbe explains like follows. When you realize what it's really all about, you see it's all the same thing. It's one enemy. It's the same enemy that's fighting the soul is fighting the body. The Teitzei is the Malach HaMavis and the Satan's all the same guy. So when you go out to fight, you have to have spirit. Then you realize it maybe looks plural, but it's really unisunai. Hashem is going to give it to your hand. Okay? You go out with the attitude, I'm going to win, you win. The Gemara is a very interesting expression. The Gemara says, Habal Tahir, if somebody comes to purify themselves, Messiah Nasi, God helps them. And the Rebbe pointed out many times, the Gemara doesn't say one who purifies themselves, God helps you. The Talmud's expression is, if you come to purify yourself, that means you're not even there yet. You're just coming to do it. You didn't get it done yet. You're coming to purify yourself. Hashem says, I'm going to help you. Oh. Hashem says, I see you coming. You're turning in the right direction. You're coming towards me. You got it. So now, that's why it says, Alivecha. Unesanei means, and this is what Hashem says, you should capture a captive. And this is connected to a mission in Pirkei Avos. In the 4th parak, it says, Eizel Gibor, who is strong, Hakovesh as Yitzrei, one who conquers the Yetzer Hara. And the commentaries point out, the Mishnah doesn't say who is strong, one who kills his Yetzer Hara. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says, who is strong? One who conquers it. What's the difference? Killing it, he's out of the picture. But you don't have him against you, you don't have him working for you. When you capture him and you make him your enemy, you make your enemy into your friend, then you have double power. Then it's not only your power, you have the enemy working with you. Like it says in Tillim, and a certain pasuk, Gam oivav yashlim imay, meaning even the enemies of David HaMelech, the enemies that he had, joined forces with him to fight David HaMelech's enemies. So that the ultimate goal is to capture a captive. It's not to kill them. Spiritually speaking, the ultimate goal of a Jew is to capture the Yetzer Hara, that then he's working for you rather than just getting rid of him. And this explains a pasuk that we've discussed before. There's a pasuk that, again, when Torah says something, it's not a simple statement. There's much more depth to it. There's a pasuk that says, Rav Tvois, if you want to get a lot of crop, a lot of grain, the koyach shor, use an ox. I mean, basically, the Gemara is teaching us, you want to plow a field, don't have a person running the plow. Have an animal leading the plow. Okay? That's what the pasuk is saying. So the question is, which fool doesn't even know that? I need a pasuk to tell me a big thing. You want to get a lot of grain? Use an ox. I don't need Torah to tell me that. So the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah explained it in a spiritual sense. And that is as follows. There's a person and there's an animal. People are run by intellect. Especially, it says, the mind controls the heart. Animals run on instinct. It says in Sfarim, why is a dog called Kelev? Kelev is 2 words, Kulo Lev. It's all heart. It's all emotional. People, sometimes when somebody gets very, very excited, you tell them, cool it. You say, cool it, man. How do you cool it? Your intellect should control the emotions. Animals don't have the intellect to control their emotions. So, for instance, somebody's kid wants to do something dangerous. They go, can I do it? So if you're a nice person, yeah, you could just let them do whatever they want. But then you understand, what do you mean? I love him. Because I love him, I'm going to tell him no. So your love is not unlimited under any condition, unconditional love, because your intellect says, 1 minute, this is not good for them. So it's limiting your love, so to speak. So people's emotions are not as great as animals' emotions. They're stronger. Now, a person has an attribute, an emotion of love. An animal has an emotion of love. An animal's emotion of love is much stronger than the human's, like we said, because the human has intellect that cools it down. So now let's take it in a spiritual level. The Yetzer Hara is an animal. Nefesh HaBahamis is the animal soul. The midas of the animal soul, the emotional attributes of the animal soul are very powerful. The godly soul, which is primarily intellect, doesn't have that many powerful emotions because the intellect cools it down. So the Pasuk is teaching us, if you really want to love God a lot, you want to get a lot of grain, use your animal soul, convince your animal soul to love God, because the love of the animal soul loving God, when you conquer the enemy, then the animal soul is now also loving God, So now you have a much stronger emotional love of Hashem than you just do with your godly soul. And that's why the Pasuk says, V'shavisa shib, you have to conquer it. Now get the animal soul to love you also. Okay? That's one thing. Then the next Pasuk says like this. You're going to see amongst the captives, Eishes Yifas Tayar. Beautiful. You're going to war against the against the nations. And all of a sudden you see a beautiful girl, you'll love her, you fall in love with her, and you want to take her for a wife. Okay? So the Torah says you have to take her home, make her look miserable, that you shouldn't want to marry her. And if you still want to marry her, you can marry her. Okay? That means the Jewish soldier at the time of war fell in love with a non-Jewish woman and he wants to marry her. So the question is, all the commentaries, the Aracham especially asks this wonderful question. The Gemara says, because later on in the battles, the Torah says, a person who is a Yarei Barachal, if you're feeble-hearted, simply means you can't handle battle, you can't take blood, don't go to war. Because you're going to just immoralize everybody else, But the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef says, it means, what do you mean, a person, Yarei V'rachal? He says, you have sins, and you feel that I don't have the merits to win, to stay alive. So the Torah says, you're a sinful person, don't go to battle. Because you need merits to win. You need God's help. You're going to go to war and not have merits, you can't do that. So basically, who went to war? Holy people that didn't have sins. The sinful people didn't go to war. That was the halacha. They didn't go to war. Who went to battle? The holier Jews. So how is it possible that a holy Jew is going to war and he's going to fall in love with a non-Jewish girl at the time of battle? I mean, how does that come? So the Chaim HaKadosh explains here, it's a phenomenal, long Orach Chaim, but it's unbelievable. He explains this whole thing, how it happens. And the story is like this. He says that at the time of the sin of Eitz Das, One second, where is it? Anyway, okay. But the Orach Chaim explains here as follows. At the time, all the neshamas of all Jews, it says in Kabbalah, all the neshamas of all Jews, basically, were in Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon included within himself the neshamas of all Jews of all future generations. This is what it says in Kabbalah. At the time of the sin, the original sin, they ate from the tree. So a lot of neshamas of Jews got lost amongst the non-Jews. That's what happened. And he says, Orach Chaim, that what happens is those lost souls amongst that become goyim, basically, are really Jewish souls that got lost. And I explained this the other day. The Gemara and the Chidah, the Rabbi Yosef Shusterman is a great Sephardic commentary and Parshat and all that. He says as follows. The Gemara says, sick person who got healed. Prisoner that became freed. Okay? So following that language, it should say a guy who converts. Akum, a guy that converts. Nowhere does it say in Gemara or anywhere, goy sheniz gayed. It always says, ger sheniz gayed. A ger who converts. And the Chidah explains why. And he says like this. When somebody is serious about conversion, not, whatever, they get serious about, and they actually convert according to halacha, that was one of the lost souls that got lost amongst the nations of the earth. And now they're coming back to become a Jew. So he says, a real guy will not convert. It's a person who was a guy. He always had a Yiddish neshama, a Jewish neshama. It got lost amongst the nations. And now it's coming back. So he says like this. Sometimes a Jew goes to war. Okay, we're talking about tzaddikim now. And all of a sudden, he falls in love with this non-Jewish woman. And he decides he wants to marry her. This is coming from God. That this woman was really... Why is he falling in love with her? Why did God make him fall in love with her? The guy's a holy man. Yeah. Because this woman that he's eventually going to marry and convert properly was really a Jewish neshama that got lost in the goyim. And now in battle, divine providence, she meets this Jew who falls in love with her, and tick, tick, tick. And so really he explains, that's why Hashem made this happen, because it's something that the guy has to bring this woman into conversion, into making her holy. And he says an interesting thing. We know that Shechem, in the famous story with Shechem when he raped the Dinah, and the whole story with the brothers, they killed out the whole city. So Shechem raped Dinah. They had a baby girl. At that time, the brothers were embarrassed. Rape, those days it was unheard of. They sent the girl down to Egypt. This is what it says in the Medrash. The brothers sent the girl down to Egypt with like a necklace that says, I am I'm a descendant of Yaakov Avinu. I'm Jacob's descendant, because Shimon married Dinah, whatever, okay? But she was really, this baby, Osnas, was a Jewish girl, because Dinah was her mother. So the Orach Chaim says over here also, how did it happen that Shechem raped Dinah? And by the way, this Osnas married Yosef when she was adopted by Potiphar. She wasn't his biological daughter because he couldn't have any kids. He adopted Osnas, and Yosef saw the necklace, and therefore he realized it's a Jewish girl from Dinah. It's Dinah's daughter. Okay, it was his niece. He was half brother with Dinah, same father, different mothers, right? But it was his niece. So Yosef married her. So he says, why did it happen? So over there in the story of Shechem, when the brothers are negotiating, Shechem was negotiating to let's become one nation, let's convert, the whole shtick. So it says, a remarkable thing, Hine haaretz rachavas yodayim hi lefnechem. If we merge, Shechem people with Yaakov's family, rachavas yodayim hi lefnechem. The aretz, the land will be open up, rachavas yodayim, open up. We'll have this whole land. We can imagine the family merger will be a multi-billion-dollar industry, It's unbelievable. So the Rachaim brings down, it says in Kabbalah, that Rachavas stands for Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian, who was one of the greatest. He was one of the 10 martyrs that were killed at the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. He was the father-in-law of Rav Meir. He's an unbelievable, great, holy tzaddik. He was murdered, the 10 martyrs. It says in Kabbalah, he says that Shechem was really the neshama of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian, this holy man. Later on, he was Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian. But initially, this neshama, this great neshama of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian, got lost into Shechem. Again, in this whole mishmash of God's great sense of humor, how neshamas end up where all they end up, And therefore, Shechem raped Dinah, but Shechem wasn't really Shechem. It was the neshama of this holy man, Rabbi Hanina ben Tradian, and therefore they had a daughter that married Yosef, who had 2 tribes, Menashe and Ephraim. So he says that's the same thing over here. Why did the guy fall in love with this girl? Because she was really a Jewish neshama that had to be elevated. And that's what happened. A phenomenal concept about this war. I mean, that doesn't mean today, by the way, anytime a Jewish guy falls in love with a shiksa, doesn't mean this is all going on. We're talking about holy tzaddikim that it happened to. Okay, next.
Does this only apply in war, or does this apply to...
This thing only applies to war.
It's not...
No, only war.
Only war.
Yeah, only war. Okay, then you have Again, chapter 22, Pasuk 8. The Pasuk says an interesting halach which applies today also. Kisivna bayis chadash. 1 second. I'm teaching the class now.
Oh, so sorry.
The Pasuk says, Kisivna bayis chadash. If you build a new house, you have to make a fence around the roof. By the way, that's halachic today. You're not allowed to have any dangerous things in your house without a protection, right? Because God doesn't want people, like it said, you're going to kill somebody. Somebody's going to die, God forbid. Okay? So what, again, not all of us are building new houses. So what does this mean for an individual Jew? So again, the explanation is very simple. Kisivna bayis chodosh means if you're building a new way of serving God, you're building a new way of serving God. You have to be very, very careful. You have to be very, very careful. Because sometimes you're tapping into the unknown, spiritually I'm saying. It might be very dangerous. Somebody sometimes is serving God in this way. Now they want to do it this way. So it says, you're building a new house? You have to you have to be very careful. Because any new thing, any journey is dangerous. Any new journey is dangerous. It's the unknown. Everybody's scared of the unknown. Why is everybody nervous the first time they go to school, the first time they go to a job? Because it's the unknown. It's not, it's just unknown. People are afraid of the unknown. So the Torah is warning us, you build a new home, meaning you're starting a new way in serving God, you have to build a protection. You can't do it any other way. Okay, that's a short thing. Now, another interesting thing over here going back to the rebellious son. Okay? So the Torah starts off, and it's one really continuation. The Torah says you fall in love with this non-Jewish girl, in war. Okay. Then he says you're going to have two wives, one you love, one you hate, and the firstborn son is going to be to the one you hate. Okay? The child of the wife you hate. So Gemara said, the Torah said, you might think you want to give the firstborn rights to the one you love, who's not the firstborn. No, you have to give them to the firstborn. Then the Torah says like this. And this is a very interesting pasuk. In chapter 21, pasuk 18. Pasuk Ches. Ki leish ben seder remeira. If a person will have the rebellious son, okay? Turns away. Seder means he's turning away from the proper way. Meira means he just doesn't listen to his father and mother. Einena shemea b'kol aviv v'kol imei. He doesn't listen to the voice of his father and mother. So then, and he tortures them, whatever, they warn him, they have to warn him and that he shouldn't do it, and eventually they kill him. And the Torah says, he might as well die innocent because this kid is for sure going to be rebellious. Now, the Torah puts so many restrictions on the reality of this situation that the Gemara, one opinion says it never happened. Such a son couldn't exist. It's only for like 6 months, and the father and mother have to sound exactly alike, and this alike, and that alike, and it's almost impossible to do. So why does the Torah say it if it's a mitzvah that never happened? Okay, number one, the Gemara says, you learn Torah, it's good, you get reward just for learning Torah. But the reality is, there is such a, in the spiritual, personal level, there is this rebellious son. And then the interesting point over here is, it should say, again, every word in Torah is exact. The pasuk says, this rebellious son, Einenu Shemea, he doesn't listen, B'kol Aviv, to the voice of his father, or B'kol Imei, and he doesn't listen to his mother. Right? Why doesn't the pasuk say, B'kol Aviv v'Imei? The Torah says he doesn't listen to the voice of the father and the voice of the mother. It should say he doesn't listen to the voice of the father and mother. Why is he doing both things? And this is, by the way, one of the biggest problems that educators have, and especially when it comes to Yiddishkeit, to Torah mitzvahs. I'm going to say it straight and then explain it. The father and the mother must be on the same page. There is Kol Aviv, the voice of the father, and the voice of the mother. The Torah is telling us, you know why he became a rebellious son? Because they didn't have the same voice. There was the father's voice and there was the mother's voice. For instance, and this doesn't only apply to Yiddishkeit, by the way, in raising kids, the parents both have to say, if they don't want the kid to do it, they have to both say no. The worst thing you can have in bringing up a kid, the father says yes or the mother says no, or vice versa. So can I go? The father says yes, the mother says no. Or vice versa. Or the mother says yes and the father says no. The worst thing, because then the kid is getting mixed signals. He doesn't know right from wrong, because in his mind, the father's a figurehead and the mother's a figurehead. Right? They're both right. They're my, role models. If they're not on the same page, the kid gets all messed up. So what is right and what is wrong? Okay? The Torah says if you don't want to have a rebellious son, the father and mother have to have one voice. A lot of these Jewish day schools, that most of the kids are non-religious, they have a very big problem. Because I'll give you a simple example. The school is teaching about, it's an Orthodox school, right? So you tell the kids, you need to eat kosher. Right after school, the parents take them to McDonald's. I'm not talking the one in Israel, which is kosher, okay? the parents say, so in the kid's mind, he says, 1 minute. My teachers are my role models, and my parents are my role models. So, like, the kid gets all mixed up. The kid literally gets mixed up. He doesn't know which one's right. The school says one thing, the parents say something else, or, in a more detailed way, the father says one thing, the mother says something else. All that does, by the way, it causes a rebellious son. And then he says at the end, it's interesting, what do the parents say in sentence 20? They say to the elders, B'neinu zeh serer u'meira, he's rebellious, einenu shemea b'korleinu. He's not listening to our voice. Which is interesting.
Yeah, because now they're united.
Not they're united. Because outwardly, what themselves, the reality as a kid is that the parents are on different pages. But they come to the elders of the city. And all of a sudden they come to say to the elders of the city, no, we have one voice. He's not listening to our voice. As if we both agree on everything.
What is wayward?
1 second. It means outwardly to the world, they tell the parents will say, no, we agree on everything. We never tell the kid, The Torah says that's not the reality. The reality is the parents are on 2 different pages. Outwardly, they come to the rabbi for marriage counseling. And they say, no, we don't have different boys. The reality is not like that. So this is what the Torah is saying. It's not the reality. A person has to understand that, again, you can't be inwardly one way and outwardly another. I'll give you another example.
Oh, I see. They're hypocritical.
This never happened, but this is a story form for us to learn from.
Correct.
Okay.
So even though the actual physical, according to me, no, not everybody agrees with that, but in one opinion, the Gemara says it never happened. Because again, it has to be only for a certain age, and he had to eat a certain amount of meat, and he had to steal this and eat that, and it's like an almost impossible scenario to happen. Okay? But the Torah is teaching us a lesson. And the Torah says like this, you can't, people come, I'll give you another, where kids see an issue. Many people are kosher at home, but not outside. Right? In the home they're kosher, which is good. I mean, as long as you keep them kosher, sometimes it's also good. Okay? But when a child sees, you're not speaking in one voice. To be kosher at home and not kosher out of the home, you're not speaking the same voice. The same parents are saying 2 different things. At home we're kosher. That means kosher is only good at the house, but outside kosher is not that important. So then why is it important in the home? I mean, it's the same person eating the same food. What's the difference in or out? And that's what they're coming to the elders, they come to the rabbis, and they say, no, he's not listening to where the voices are the same. So the Torah said, but that's not the reality. The reality is that kol aviv and kol imay, there's a separate voice, they're not on the same page, and that's a very big problem. So that's so even though again it never happened, but it's an extremely important lesson. Now another interesting thing, the Torah says in chapter 22, pasuk Yud Aleph, the Torah says you're not allowed to wear shatnez. Okay, chapter 22, pasuk Yud Aleph 11. Do not wear shatnez. Tzemer upishtem yachtav, wool and linen together. It's forbidden biblically for a man or woman, anybody, to wear any garments, by the way, that can include a blanket, it can what's interesting, 1 year, they realized in some of the, the baseball gloves, the Wilson baseball gloves, there was shatnez in it. Wool and linen. Yeah, you're wearing a glove. You wear it.
Oh, in the lining.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you're wearing it. If you have a blanket, let's say, and you cover yourself with it, you're wearing it. It's giving you warmth.
Wow.
It's wearing it. So you're not allowed to wear shatnez. So again, this is one of the most...
What if you wear 2 layers?
That doesn't matter. As long as they're not sewn together. If they're sewn together, then you got a problem. But this is one of the classical examples of an illogical, it's like meat and milk. Meat is kosher, milk is kosher. All of a sudden, two positives you put together, it becomes a negative. It doesn't work like that. Your wool is kosher, linen is kosher. All of a sudden, you put wool and linen together, it's not kosher. So even though it's completely illogical, that's what Torah says, it's illogical, but nevertheless, the Rambam says we try to see reasoning of it. So it's interesting, when the Rambam says this law in the book of mitzvahs, the Rambam brings down, because that's what the idol-worshipping priests used to wear. The idol-worshipping priests used to wear garments of wool and linen together. In fact, one of the garments, and again, the same Torah says no, says yes, the avnei, the belt that the Kohanim wore, had wool and linen. Therefore, they were not allowed to wear it when they didn't work in the Beis HaMikdash, because they're wearing wool and linen together. It was, if the part of there was wool and linen in the avnei, in the belt, the gartel that they wore. Okay, but anyway, that's a bit. So the question is, why? Let's try to understand the reason for this. So one of the reasons is because wool is from animals. So wool is animal life. Pishtan, linen, flax, is plant life. Okay? There's inanimate, there's plant, there's animal, and human. Everyone has to be separate. There's plant life and there's animal life. You don't mix them together. They're different jobs, different functions, different purposes you don't mix them together. But the commentaries say another very interesting thing, by the way. The first murder that took place in Chumash was Cain killing Hevel. Yeah, what brought that about? Cain brought flax, as they both brought a carbon sacrifice to God. Cain brought, the pasuk says, he brought linen, junk. In those days it was like junk from the ground. Hevel, his sacrifice was the wool shearings from an animal. He brought that to God. So God accepted his sacrifice because it was more prestigious than this piece of junk that the Cain brought. Okay, so it's basically wool and linen together. His was flat linen and his was wool, and because of that, the first murder took place in Torah. So Torah says, you know what? That was too big of a sin. Let's cool it. No wool and linen together anymore. That's what Hashem says. Okay, then there's another remarkable thing later on in the Parsha.
Are we going to learn about the mother bird?
The what?
The mother bird.
No, it's not too much over there to talk about. What's the pasuk? Okay. Probably closer to the end of the Sedra. One. There's a pasuk over here, and it says, "Ki be'ish chet mishpat maves." The Torah says like this: if a person will have a sin of capital punishment, here in chapter 21, pasuk 22, the Torah says like this: "V'chi be'ish chet mishpat maves." If a person will have sin of capital punishment, v'humas, and the president kills him, v'salisa eisei alates. All the people that were killed by the 4 capital punishments, after they were killed, they were hung on a tree. And then the Torah says you cannot leave the corpse overnight. By the way, that's the source in Jewish law, that if somebody dies, you're supposed to bury them ASAP. and not even leave him overnight. In even today, in certain places, the guy dies, but they bury him at night. Today, the cemetery is closed. You can't do anything about it. But I'm saying the Torah says if somebody was hung, capital punishment, the Torah says you can't leave him overnight. So it says like this. There was a big makubal called Ramak, Ramesha Kurdavara. It was a very, very big makubal. He was a colleague of the Arizal. Okay? Well, the Ramak, Ramesha Kurdavara, passed away. The Arizal eulogized him. And he says like this. He quoted this pasuk, and this is what he said. V'chiyah bi'ish, if there will be by a person, chet. Chet means a lacking. The word chet in Hebrew, even though it means sin, but it's not, there's different levels of sin. There's chet, aven, pesha. These are all different levels of sin. Okay? Chet, there's a pasuk in Malachim that says, me and my son Shlomo will be lacking. The word chet means lacking. There's a pasuk also, wherever it is, it says, Ein tzaddik ba'aretz, there is no tzaddik in the earth, asher yaseh tov, that would only do good, v'lo yachten, he doesn't sin. Okay? Obviously, a Beinani doesn't sin. A tzaddik doesn't even have a yetzer hara. A tzaddik for sure doesn't sin. So what does the pasuk mean when it says, there is no such man, ein tzaddik ba'aretz, asher yaseh tov v'lo yachta. So Chassidus explains, it doesn't mean sin. It means there is no such thing as a perfect person that's not lacking something. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest of all Jews, the pasuk said, "V'atachasreu ma'at malukim." He was missing a little bit from God. The Gemara says that there are 50 levels of understanding. God gave him to Moshe reached 49. Okay? For Moshe Rabbeinu, because it's impossible. Perfection is God. Okay? So the word chet doesn't mean necessarily a sin. It means something lacking that caused him to die. So the Arizal said like this. V'chiyah be'ish. Ish is a prominent person like the Ramak. Chet, something lacking in his life, not God forbid sin. Mishpat maves v'humas, and he was killed because of it. He died because of it. Okay? In other words, if there's a great tzaddik, the only sin that he had was that he was lacking a little bit. You know? He lacked perfection, but he was perfect. Hang it on the tree. What do you mean, hang it on the tree? Say that he died only because God decreed death in the world by the Teitzei. In fact, the Gemara says in Bava Basra, there was 4 people, and the Gemara says the names. There were 4 tzaddikim. The only reason they died was because God decreed death for humans at the time Adam and Chava sinned. And who were they? Binyamin, Yaakov's son Binyamin, Yishai, David HaMelech's father, Amram, Moshe Rabbeinu's father, and Chilov ben David. David HaMelech had a son by the name of Chilov. That was his name. These 4 tzaddikim, the Gemara says in Bava Basra, the only reason they died was because God decreed death in the world. So when the Arizal eulogized the Ramak, he said this pasuk, if there'll be a great person, there will be chet, a little bit of lacking, and because of that, mishpat maves, he died. But the question, he's such a great Jew, why did he die? V'salisa oisei al eitz, hang it on the tree, meaning say the reason why it happened was because of the tree and that God decreed death into the world. That's how he eulogized the Ramak. Okay. Now, also in this week's Parsha, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to Amalek first, and if we have time, we'll finish this. All the way at the end of the Parsha, Chapter 25, Pasuk 17. Okay? It speaks about the nation of Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way out of Egypt. Asher karcha baderech simply means they met you on the way. Vayizanid b'cha, and they gave you like they started up with the low end of the people, and you were tired and you weren't fearing God. You know, so Amalek started up with you. So the Torah says, what do you have to do? Timcha zecher Amalek, you have to erase, you have to eradicate Amalek. Not only remember, but don't forget. That means there's a mitzvah in the Torah to eradicate the nation of Amalek. We don't find that by any other nation. What is so unique about Amalek that it's so bad? And what is the Amalek personal? What is the personal Amalek? So first of all, when the Torah says in sentence Yitches, Asher karcha baderach, literally it means they met you on the way. Okay, that's what it means simply. But the word kar in Hebrew means cold. Cham is warm, kar is cold. What is the unique evil of Amalek? The Gemara says about Amalek, Reish is goyim Amalek. What's unique evil about Amalek is Yodeya Esri Bainai, it understood the greatness of God and yet rebelled against him. Amalek is the intellect, you know, the 7 nations of Canaan with the 7 midos, the bad 7 emotional attributes of evil. Amalek is intellectual evil. What does Amalek do? So first of all, the numerical value of Amalek is, it's 240, which is the same numerical value as the word safek, which means doubt. The doubt. Amalek is brilliant. It's intellectual. Okay? Amalek doesn't come to a Jew and say, hey, go worship idols. He knows the Jew won't listen. What does Amalek do? It says, you know what? Cool it. Don't get so excited about Torah mitzvahs. Karcha baderech. Amalek causes you to cool down. Don't be so enthusiastic. Don't be so excited. You know, cool it, man. Do it, but cool it. How does he come to you and cool it? That's what the concept of Amalek, meaning it's a doubt. What does Amalek do? Because Amalek is intellectual, how do you conquer? All you do is start making doubts in their head. You know, maybe Taka, who says this is the way to do it, maybe this way. Maybe I don't have to do it, maybe. It's a bunch of doubts. Amalek is so brilliant in its way of getting the Jews to sin. It doesn't say don't do it. It cools you down. Don't get so excited. How does he do that? By casting doubts. The Torah says that level of evil has to be eradicated. That is the worst level of evil. Because there's an expression in Chazal, our sages say, Ein simcha kataras hasfekas. There's no greater joy than when our doubts are solved. A person that has doubts has a miserable life. I don't know. You know, they're all miserable. If you know where you're going, so you don't have any doubts. There's a story of Rabbi Yosef Shusterman was brilliant. We mentioned his name a bunch of times. He was super brilliant. The dukes, I'm talking about a 6-7-year-old kid. And the nobles and the dukes in his region loved speaking to him. So one time the main duke calls him in and he says, Yonason, he says, do you know that according to your Torah you have to become a goy? According to your Torah you have to become an idol worshiper. So the kid says to him, why? He said, because your own Torah says you have to go follow the majority. If you have a court case Okay, X amount of judges say this, X amount of judges say this. Who do you go by? The majority opinion. So he said to him, the majority of people in the world are goyim. So the Torah says you have to become a goy. So this little pipsqueak kid, without any hesitation, says to him, you don't know what you're talking about. This that the Torah says you follow the majority is when there's a doubt. Is the guy innocent or is the guy guilty? Okay? So I don't know if the guy, some people say innocent, some people say, so if there's a doubt, you follow the majority. But if there's no doubt, you don't follow the majority. I have no doubts about my being Jewish. So there's no way I have to become a guy. That's the way the kid answered him. The problem with Amalek is, so the Gemara says, "Ein simcha kataras asfeikas." There's no greater joy than solving your doubts. Amalek, the concept of doubts, the Torah says, need to be eradicated. You have to erase it, step on it. Timcha zechra. You have to get rid of it completely. It's something that can't exist. And that's why Amalek is the worst of all nations. The problem is today there's no nation of Amalek because they're all mixed. All the nations were mixed, so there's no basic nation of Amalek. But the Torah says this is what you need to do. You have to remember what they did. Don't forget what they did, because doubts, coldness. Again, I'm just going to finish. It's late. I'll finish with a story of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov told the students, whatever you see or hear is divine providence. There's a lesson. So the story is told once the students of the Baal Shem Tov were going to the Rebbe, to the Baal Shem Tov for Yom Tov. It was winter. So they didn't have California winters. The Russian winters were freezing. So as they're walking to the Baal Shem Tov, they noticed that there was a non-Jewish community and there was a frozen lake, and they were cutting across out of the ice to bring back to their church for their holiday, whatever it was. So the students of the Baal Shem Tov started thinking to themselves, what do we learn from this? We saw it, right? Hashem showed it to us. We have to learn a lesson. One of them came up with a brilliant idea. He says, water flows. Water is life. Torah is likened to water. Water is life, sustains life when it flows, when there's warmth. If Judaism becomes cold, make your Judaism, you do it, but it's freezing. It becomes so bad, you can even cut a cross out of it. Mm-hmm. That's what they told me. It could become so bad, cold Judaism, you can even cut a cross. And that's what they learned. Water is the source of life when it's warm, when it flows. Yiddishkeit has to have enthusiasm. That's what Amalek does. Amalek says, freeze it. It's so bad, you can even cut a cross out of it. So the Torah says, eradicate it. Okay, again, Wednesday night there's no class. But in Mitzvah Shem next Monday there's a class, and until then everybody should have a very good week, a great Shabbos. We should only hear good news and